In this video we will explore the natural remedies for gallstones, and this includes the traditional Chinese medicine, homeopathy and all other so-called therapies, non-surgical and non-medical, that have been put out as treatment for gallstones. And the purpose is to see whether or not they work and if evidence exists. We are not talking about anecdotal evidence but actual scientific evidence. So let's get started. I think the first question is, how might these natural remedies work? So let's look at this picture, and over here you can see the liver. It has two tubes coming out of it, the bile tube that forms a single tube, and it's attached to the sac-like organ called the gallbladder, and this bile tube then travels down and empties into part of the small bowel. So over here is the stomach. The stomach churns the food and passes it on into the small bowel. At the back of the stomach is the pancreas. That has an important function in digestion of food. It produces enzymes which travel down this tube. And over here in the sac-like organ, the gallbladder, where stones are formed, and these black blobs that you see are representations of gallstones. So whenever anyone eats a meal, fat digestion requires bile to be presented here at the right time, as shown in this diagram through the arrows, and the meal stimulates the gallbladder to contract and extract the bile so that it arrives at the right time. So that's how nature has designed it. When gallstones are present, they can obstruct the exit to the gallbladder and cause pain. There are three major ways in which natural remedies might possibly work. So looking at the first one is a dissolution therapy, and this means that the gallstones are actually dissolved. And for this to happen, whatever natural remedy is taken by the patient has to make its way either through the bile or through the wall of the gallbladder to act on the gallstones and to slowly dissolve them. Now, if that were to happen and the gallstones were to be dissolved, then it has to follow the same rules as we have for the medical therapy that we use to dissolving gallstones, and that is that this therapy must be secreted in the bile, that this duct, the cystic duct, must be patent, that the stones must be of a small size, and the gallbladder should be functioning for this to be successful. Next possible mechanism is the gallbladder flush. This is a lay term that I understand means that the gallbladder is made to contract so violently that it gets rid of all of the stones. Now that sounds quite attractive if that were possible. However, again, just like with the dissolution therapy, there are certain important anatomical caveats, and this can only happen if the cystic duct were patent, so that the gallstones could actually pass through this tube. And for the gallstones to pass, they not only have to pass through this tube, but then they end up in the main bile tube, and then the main bile tube has also to pass them through into the small bowel. So the stones have to be small in size, and this may well be associated with severe pain, especially if the main bile tube has to pass these stones. It is possible for the stones to get obstructed and cause jaundice, infection in the bile, and rarely acute pancreatitis if this treatment was really to be successful. Okay, our next step is to assess the natural remedies through research evidence. What does that mean? We have to differentiate anecdote versus evidence. An anecdote is something that you might hear someone say on YouTube or on their website about efficacy of a treatment. Medical evidence, on the other hand, collates data carefully over a period of time, assesses the data, and then that is put together to draw conclusions. It is then put forward for publication in biomedical peer-reviewed journals, and it is assessed by experts in the field before it is published. For all such treatments, there has to be a biological plausibility. What does that mean? There has to be a mechanism that is explained by the data, which explains the way this treatment has come about. Now, we also have to be mindful of the pseudoscientific terms that abound the YouTube as well as the wider internet. And there are loads and loads of these, and it's important to not to be drawn into these. These include the gallbladder flush, the liver flush, the liver detox, the bile flush, rejuvenation of the liver, and so on. None of these have any real scientific meaning. Let's look at a small risk of natural treatments that have been proposed, available on internet. So the gallbladder flush, so-called, may include various proportions of apple juice, several herbs, olive oil, apple cider vinegar, and Epsom salt. And the proposed mechanism is that it gets rid of the gallbladder stones by passing them through. Then there are other possible dissolution therapies, although they may help in preventing gallstone formation, such as milk thistle artichoke, and so on. Finally, there is traditional Chinese medicine, which perhaps has a combination of gallbladder flush and dissolution or preventative strategies within the various herbs available. And of course, the homeopathic medicine also proposes treatments for small gallstones and strategies for prevention. Now let's look at the published evidence in support of these treatments. And a careful review of literature actually shows only one thing: there is no evidence of efficacy of any of these treatments in treating gallstones effectively or in preventing gallstones to be formed in the first place. And when evidence is presented, it only theorizes how the therapies might work without actually telling us the number of cases that have been successfully treated and when the gallstones have been prevented from being formed. Going forward, there has been a scientific review of the traditional Chinese medicine, and it reviewed a large number of patients who were treated with traditional Chinese medicine, and it found no evidence of efficacy of traditional Chinese medicine in treating or preventing gallstones. Homeopathy has limited evidence, which is anecdotal, based on very, very small numbers and limited to patients with small gallstones without too many symptoms, and hence it is difficult to assess. In conclusion, what can we say? So here is the sum total. There is absolutely no scientific evidence that any of these treatments are effective. Some may actually be harmful. Large quantities of even natural products can be harmful. And with all of these treatments, the gallbladder still remains there. So even if the gallstones are passed, which I'm not sure about, new stones can form, and hence the problem remains. Also, by not going to the doctor, you may actually make the condition much worse and more difficult to treat. Gallstones may not cause symptoms in 50% of the patients after the first attack of pain, and this is one of the factors that may be used in putting these treatments forward. Avoiding fat and dairy products is a reasonably effective way of preventing pain. You must always consult your doctor when the symptoms are severe or they do not resolve. I end this talk in the hope rather than the belief that this may help some in reaching the right decision about how they have their gallstones treated.